Let us listen to these ancient words together. Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and Judea. It won't be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. They broke that covenant with me, even though I was their husband, declares the Lord. No, this is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my instructions within them and engrave them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. They will no longer need to teach each other to say, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord, for I will forgive their wrongdoings and never again remember their sins. And now let us read our gospel lesson for today. John chapter 12, verses 20 through 33. Some Greeks were among those who had come up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and made a request. Sir, we want to see Jesus. Philip told Andrew, and Andrew and Philip told Jesus. And this is Jesus' reply. The time has come for the human one, the Son of Man, to be glorified. I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their lives will lose them, and those who hate their lives in this world will keep them forever. Whoever serves me must follow me. Wherever I am, there my servant will be also. My Father will honor whoever serves me. Now I am deeply troubled. What should I say? Father, save me from this time? No, for this is the reason I have come to this time. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd standing there heard and said, it's thunder. Others said, an angel spoke to him. Jesus replied, the voice wasn't for my benefit, but for yours. Now is the time for judgment of this world. Now this world's rulers will be thrown out. When I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to me. He said this to show them he was going to die. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let these ancient words impart. God, grant me the serenity to accept the sermon I cannot improve, the courage to improve the sermon I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a really long train? It seems that every time I get caught by a train, it is the longest train in the universe. That might be an exaggeration. It might be a little hyperbole. But when you want to be going somewhere in a hurry, getting caught by even a short train can seem like a huge first world inconvenience. and it can ruin your day if you let it. I am always amazed to see just how long can they be. Remember what we used to do as a kid? What would we do? Count the cars as they were going by. Count the cars. Did you know that one of the longest trains ever recorded and stretched almost 5 miles long? It had 8 engines that pulled almost 700 cars. Man, I'd have to start over a lot just using my fingers and toes to get to 700. Now that's one big train. Would you lose your cool if you got caught by that freight passing by? Would you lose count soon as you tried to count each car that clanked by on the rail in front of you as those lights on the cross warning bars blinked and sang in time? The thing that's always fascinated me about watching those really long trains is how sooner or later all of the cars follow the same path as the first engine pulls it down the tracks. It's follow the leader. In the front engine turns in one direction or another, all the rest of the cars will turn just in that same spot on their tracks. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus says that whoever serves me must follow me. And where am I? There my servants will be also. It's sort of like our train, isn't it? Jesus is inviting us not to the crazy train, but to a train, possibly. Jesus is inviting us to follow his lead. We can't follow Jesus in the same way that the train cars do, can we? We are not tethered to the person in front of us, and we are not placed on tracks that lead us in the direction that Jesus is inviting us to go. No. We are invited by Jesus to follow him, and when we follow him, we will find our way, is what he says. Following Jesus means first locating Jesus. You've got to be able to locate to follow. A Sunday school teacher was delivering a station wagon full of kids home one day, and a fire truck zoomed past. Sitting in the front seat of the fire truck was a Dalmatian dog with its hat on, perched and ready to go to the fire. The children began discussing in the car what the dog's duties were. One of the little youngsters said they use him to keep the crowds back. No, said another, he's just there for good luck. And a third child brought the argument to a close. No, they use the dog to find the fire hydrant. That third child might be correct. We trust that the brave men and women who fight fires will be able to find the hydrant where the source of the water is found. We too have to locate the source of love and hope and joy and peace. And we have to locate where Jesus is leading us and what Jesus is inviting us to do. We can read about Jesus. We can pray to Jesus. We can even wear a cross that symbolizes Jesus' death and new life. But are we following Jesus? Jesus invites us to follow his example. Examples he set in the Bible by his life and his lifestyle. Some of them really simple. They are. Some of them are really simple. But some are very difficult. Caring for those who need us. Being kind and generous. Showing our love and sharing. When we do things like this, we're letting Jesus be our leader, just like those big locomotives that pull the train down the tracks. But it's not always easy. But the good news is we have a chance to follow him every day. And if we fail today, we get tomorrow to try again, to get back up on those tracks and try again. Fred Craddock gives some tangible examples of faithfully following the Jesus train. He writes, I think it means to be willing to empty your pockets for somebody else's children. Not just your children, not just your grandchildren, but for someone else's children. He says, I think it means to treat as father and mother those who really aren't your father or mother. He writes, I think it means to claim as brother and sister people who are not kin to you. People who are not the same skin color or culture or gender or even the same religion as you. He goes a bit further. Fred says, I think it means to reach out and touch untouchable people as far as our society has deemed them untouchable. He says, I think it means to sit at a table with people who live far outside the tight social circles where you and your friends live. And don't just sit with them, break bread with them. He says it means to be a voice for moral values in a culture that will immediately accuse you of sinking into a moralistic thinking. He says it means to witness for Jesus Christ when evangelism is being laughed at everywhere else. Be a prophetic voice. He says it means to be an advocate, to speak the gospel as though something were at stake for someone and you are their only voice, their only hope, their only chance at being heard. In the 1990s, the religious fashion craze was to wear a bracelet that said WWJD. What would Jesus do? I, along with several others, always thought that was an incomplete question. I would much prefer it say, what would Jesus have me do? I truly believe that the world around us needs an introduction to Jesus, and perhaps the best way to introduce anyone to Jesus is for you and I to model Jesus. The best way to model Jesus starts with sacrificing yourself for their sake. I don't think this sacrifice would always include death, and for sometimes that might be too easy. But I do think it means going the extra mile, offering them your coat, or some of the best way for them to be introduced to Jesus is to see that you put others first. More people are caught by our actions than are changed by our words. More people are introduced to Jesus by yours and mine witness instead of the words we say and the jewelry we wear. So how are you and I doing in relationship to authentically and faithfully following and modeling Jesus? If we are striving to be more faithful in our efforts to follow Jesus, then someone will notice that we have had a change in our heart and that we have changed our minds about the values we work towards and the people that we help. Change will be noticeable if you're modeling and following Jesus. We would not only have a change of hearts and our lives to follow Jesus, but we would have a change of our minds as well. Little Martha, she was at her very first wedding. And she just stood in the pew and watched everything, taking it all in. The entire ceremony. When it was over, she asked her mother, Mother, why did that lady change her mind? And mother said, what do you mean? Why did she change her mind? Well, she went down the aisle with one man and she came back out with another. Somebody that hadn't witnessed it might think that. So how about you? How about me? How about us? Jeremiah and Jesus says that the time is coming and that time is now. You walked into this sanctuary this morning. And then you get a chance to walk out of this sanctuary today. possibly with a change of direction in your life. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, if you board the wrong train, it is no use running along the corridor in the other direction. You have to disembark. You have to change trains to get to where you want to go. Jesus invites us today to stop running along the corridor of the wrong train. Jesus invites us to jump on the Jesus train and to find the life you and I were created to live, the life that is in covenant with God, a life that serves the world the way Jesus served the world, with love. If God is our God, and if we are the people of God, then this is the covenant we will live faithfully into and with for the rest of our days here on earth. A 14-year-old teenager named Michael teaches us a little bit about being in a covenantal relationship. He was in a covenantal relationship with his mother. And someone asked him, what have you learned in your 14 years about being in a relationship with your mother as son and mother? And he says, I have learned never tell your mom her diet is not working. Wise words. So how is our covenantal relationship and our spiritual diet working? I hope faithfully. And if not faithful as it could be, well, we all get a chance to change that today. All aboard. Amen.